The Lycan King was dying, not from battle wounds, not from poison or curse or any enemy's blade. He was dying from need, a primal, consuming hunger that burned through his veins like wildfire, that made his wolf howl and claw at his insides, that left him on his knees outside a healer's cottage in the middle of the night, begging like he'd never begged for anything in his 300 years of life. "Please, Sera, just one taste, just one." His voice cracked on the words, desperate, raw, broken. And inside that cottage, pressing her back against the door, Sera Moonwhisper, the Omega healer he'd cast out 5 years ago, the woman he'd called worthless in front of his entire pack, stood frozen because the most powerful Lycan in 5 kingdoms was on her doorstep, begging her, the reject, the outcast, the Omega everyone said was too weak to matter. But here's what King Darien Nightshade didn't know. Sera had changed. The broken girl he threw away had become something dangerous, something powerful, something he would never see coming. This is the story of a king brought to his knees and the Omega who held all the power. 5 years ago, Sera Moonwhisper believed she had found her purpose. She was 23, an Omega with a rare gift, healing through touch, sensing sickness before it bloomed, drawing pain from wounds with just her hands. The elders of her small village had tested her, confirmed her abilities, and sent her to the Lycan King's court with high hopes. "You'll serve the most powerful pack in the realm," her grandmother had said, braiding moonflowers into Sera's silver blonde hair. "You'll be valued, protected." Maybe even she'd stopped, but Sera had heard the unspoken hope, maybe even noticed by the unmated king himself. Sera had arrived at the obsidian palace with stars in her eyes and healing oils in her satchel. She left 3 months later with nothing but shame and a shattered heart. Welcome back, my beautiful family. Before we dive deeper into today's story, please take a moment to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with someone who loves powerful storytelling. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and let's continue with Sera's journey. The Nightshade Court wasn't like the warm hearth gatherings of her village. It was all sharp edges and sharper eyes, stone corridors that swallowed sound, Lycans who moved like predators because that's exactly what they were. And at the center of it all, King Darien Nightshade, 6'7" of pure dominance, eyes like molten amber that could freeze you with a glance or burn you alive with their intensity. Hair as black as midnight, usually tied back to reveal a face that looked carved from granite, all hard angles and unforgiving lines. When he walked into a room, every Lycan in it, Alpha, Beta, Omega, bowed their heads instinctively. He was magnificent, terrifying, completely untouchable. Sera had seen him exactly 4 times during her service at court. The first was her introduction ceremony. She'd stood in a line of new servants and healers, head bowed like a proper Omega, while the king inspected them with the same interest he'd give furniture. His gaze had passed over her in half a second, dismissed, irrelevant. The second time was at a formal dinner where she'd been serving. She'd accidentally brushed his arm while setting down a wine goblet. The contact had sent a shock through her system, her healing sense going haywire, detecting something she couldn't quite name. Something hungry, desperate, but when she'd gasped and looked up, his expression was ice, cold, annoyed at her clumsiness. The third time was in the healing wing, when she'd been treating a warrior's infected wound. The king had been visiting his injured soldiers. He'd paused at her station, watched her work for exactly 12 seconds, then moved on without a word. The fourth time was the day he destroyed her. It started with Lady Morgana. She was the king's advisor on supernatural affairs, a high-ranking beta female with silver eyes and a smile like a blade. Beautiful in the way winter is beautiful, cold, deadly. Everyone knew she wanted to be the king's chosen mate, though he'd shown no interest in taking one. Sera had been called to Morgana's chambers late one evening. "Headache," the woman had said, reclining on silk pillows like a bored cat. "Your Omega healing touch should help." Sera had approached carefully. The moment her fingers touched Morgana's temple, she knew. No headache. Instead, her healing sense detected something else entirely, a deliberate manipulation of Morgana's own energy. Self-inflicted pain. Fake. But why would a high-ranking beta fake illness and summon an Omega healer? The answer came the next morning. Sera was summoned to the throne room, not for healing, for judgment. The entire court was there. Every high-ranking Lycan, every noble family, all gathered in the massive chamber with its obsidian pillars and bloodstone floors. And at the center, on his throne of carved black stone, sat King Darien. Beside him stood Lady Morgana, looking fragile and wounded, one hand pressed to her temple. "Sera Moonwhisper," the king's voice cut through the chamber like a whip. "You are accused of assault against a member of my court. The words didn't make sense. Sera's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lady Morgana reports that during last night's healing session, you deliberately hurt her, used your supposed gift to cause pain rather than relieve it. She describes a burning sensation, lasting damage to her energy pathways. That's not true, Sera finally found her voice. Your Majesty, I would never. I sensed no illness. What I felt was... Silence. Morgana's voice was soft, pained, perfectly calculated. She turned to the king with tears glistening in her silver eyes. I gave this Omega a chance to serve. I was kind to her, and she repaid that kindness with violence, perhaps because she was jealous. An Omega can be so emotional, so unstable when they see others in positions they covet. The implication was clear. Sera, the lowly Omega, was jealous of Morgana's closeness to the king, had attacked out of spite. It was a lie, a complete fabrication, but who would believe an Omega over a high-ranking Beta? Sera's eyes found the king's, pleading silently for him to see the truth, to sense the manipulation. But King Darian's expression was carved from stone. Your Majesty, please. Sera's voice cracked. I'm a healer. It's against everything I am to cause harm. Test me. Ask the other healers. Check my record. I have served faithfully. I have harmed no one. Your service record is irrelevant when weighed against the testimony of my advisor, the king said coldly. Lady Morgana is a valued member of this court. Her word carries weight. Yours does not. The words landed like physical blows. Sera felt her knees weaken. But you don't understand, she tried again, desperate now. I sensed something wrong in her energy. Not illness, but something deliberate, a manipulation. I think she wanted me to. Are you now accusing Lady Morgana of deception? The king's voice dropped to something dangerous. An Omega, accusing a Beta of my inner circle, of deliberately orchestrating this scenario. The way he said it made it sound absurd, impossible. Sera realized with crushing certainty that this was a trap she couldn't escape. The king stood, descending from his throne with predatory grace. Each footstep echoed through the silent chamber. He stopped 3 feet from Sera, so close she could smell his scent, pine and leather, and something wild that made her Omega instincts scream conflicting messages. Submit, run, both at once. You have served here for 3 months, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. In that time, you have been unremarkable, forgettable. The only notable thing about you is this accusation of violence against someone far above your station. The cruelty in those words, unremarkable, forgettable, cut deeper than any blade. I believe, the king continued, that you are an Omega who has overestimated her importance, who perhaps confused my advisor's kindness for something more. And when reality disappointed you, you lashed out. That is not what happened, Sera whispered, tears burning her eyes now. Your Majesty, I swear on the moon itself, then you swear falsely. His eyes were empty. Void of compassion. You are hereby stripped of your position. You will leave my territory before sunset. If you are found within Nightshade lands after dark, you will be imprisoned for assault. The guards will escort you to collect your belongings. You have 1 hour. The room tilted. Sera tried to speak, but her throat had closed. This couldn't be happening. She'd done nothing wrong. Nothing. Guards materialized at her sides, gripping her arms as they began to pull her toward the massive doors. She heard Morgana's voice, sweet as poisoned honey. Thank you, my king. I feel safer already knowing such instability has been removed from your court. Sera looked back one last time. The king had already turned away, dismissing her as completely as if she'd never existed. And there, just visible on Morgana's face before she schooled it to concern, was a smile, triumphant, satisfied, victorious. They escorted Sera to her small room in the servants' quarters, watched as she packed her few possessions into a worn canvas bag, her healing oils, her grandmother's moonflower comb, the simple dresses she'd brought from home, everything fit into one bag, proof of how little she'd accumulated in 3 months, how little she'd mattered. The guards walked her through the servants' entrance, avoiding the main halls so the other servants wouldn't see. But word had already spread. Sera could feel the stares from windows, hear the whispers following her like ghosts. The Omega who attacked Lady Morgana, the unstable healer, the girl who thought she was special. The gates closed behind her with a final, condemning clang. And just like that, Sera was alone in the capital city with nowhere to go and a reputation in ruins. She'd used the last of her coins to buy passage on a merchant's cart heading north to the borderlands, the forgotten places where desperate people went when nowhere else would have them. That was 5 years ago. And now, tonight, in her small cottage on the edge of the whispering forest, Sera stood with her back pressed against a door, listening to a king beg. "Please, Sera, I know you're in there. I can hear your heartbeat through the door." His voice was rougher than she remembered, raw, like he'd been screaming. "Go away," Sera said, her voice steadier than her racing heart. "I can't." A thud, his forehead against the wood maybe, or his fist. "Please, I wouldn't be here if I had any other choice." "I need," his voice cracked. "I need your help." "You need my help?" The laugh that escaped her was sharp enough to draw blood. "The worthless Omega who attacked your precious advisor, that healer." "I was wrong." The words dropped into the night like stones into still water. About that day, about Morgana, about everything. Sera's breath caught. 5 years. 5 years of surviving alone, of rebuilding herself from nothing, of carrying the weight of his condemnation. And now, 2 words. "I was wrong." Like that could fix anything. "Go away," she repeated. "I'm dying, Sera." The words hung in the air. Heavy. Undeniable. "Dying people don't walk 3 days through cursed forest," she said, but her hand had moved from the door handle, no longer ready to flee. "Desperate people do." A pause. "I've been to every healer in the realm, 12 kingdoms, 47 healers. Some tried bloodletting, some tried blessing rituals. One tried to burn the hunger out of me. Nothing works. It's getting worse." Against every screaming instinct, Sera asked, "What hunger?" The silence, stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, the hunger to mate. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, goddess, it's been building for months," he continued, his voice thick with shame. "At first I thought it was just normal urges. I'm a Lycan King. We have strong drives, but this is different. Wrong. It's like fire in my veins, like my wolf is trying to claw its way out of my skin. I can't sleep, can't eat, can't focus on anything but the need. And every healer I've consulted says the same thing. They can't help me. They can't even identify what's causing it." Sera pressed her palm flat against the door, her healer's instincts warring with her self-preservation. "And you came to me because you're the only healer who ever sensed something the others couldn't," he said quietly. "That day with Morgana." "You were right, Sera. She had manipulated her own energy. She'd been testing you, testing whether an Omega healer could detect sophisticated beta deception. And you did. You saw through it immediately. I was a fool to dismiss you. A cruel, prideful fool. So now that you need me, now I'm suddenly competent?" Sera's voice hardened. "Convenient. I deserve that. I deserve your hatred." "But Sera, please." The desperation in his voice was palpable. "I'm not just suffering. I'm dangerous. 3 days ago, I nearly attacked one of my own warriors during training, lost control completely. My wolf wanted to rip him apart simply because he was male and near me. If this continues, I'll become a threat to my own pack, maybe to everyone." Her healing sense was already reaching out, extending beyond the door, and what she felt made her gasp. His energy was chaos, absolute chaos, like a storm contained in flesh, threatening to burst free at any moment. And underneath it all was that hunger he'd described, primal, overwhelming, all-consuming. But there was something else too, something that made her healer's instincts scream. "This isn't natural," she said slowly. "This was done to you, I know." His voice was grim. "But I don't know who or why or how to stop it. And Sera, I think I have maybe a week before I completely lose control, before my wolf takes over and I become the monster every Omega thinks alphas are. She should turn him away, should let him suffer, should make him feel a fraction of the pain he'd caused her. But Sera had never been able to ignore someone in need, even someone who'd destroyed her, especially someone whose energy signature was screaming for help. "If I do this," she said carefully, "we do it on my terms, in my space, by my rules. You don't give orders here. You don't make demands. You submit to my healing or you leave." "Anything," he said immediately. "Everything. I'll submit to whatever you require." Sera took a breath, her hand moving to the door handle. "And Darian, if you ever treat me the way you did 5 years ago, if you dismiss me or belittle me or make me feel worthless again, I will throw you out of my cottage and let you suffer. I don't care if you're the king. Here, you're just a patient. Understood?" "Understood." His voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you, Sera. Thank you." She opened the door. The Lycan King collapsed at her feet. He looked nothing like the powerful ruler who'd condemned her 5 years ago. His clothes were travel-stained and torn. His hair hung loose and tangled around his face. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His skin had a grayish tint that spoke of serious illness, but it was his eyes that shocked her most. Those amber eyes that had been so cold, so empty when they'd dismissed her. Now they burned with fever and desperation and something that looked almost like relief. "You look terrible," Sera said bluntly. "I feel worse." He tried to smile and failed. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, and he hauled himself to his feet with visible effort. The moment he crossed her threshold, she felt it. A pulse of energy so strong it made her cottage windows rattle. His wolf, recognizing her healing power, reaching for it like a drowning man reaching for shore. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to the simple chair by her fireplace. He obeyed without argument, watching as she moved around the space, lighting candles, gathering supplies, herbs and oils and clean cloths, the tools of her trade. "This is going to hurt," she warned, approaching him with a bowl of silverweed oil. "What you're experiencing isn't just magical, it's partly physical. Your body is consuming itself trying to satisfy an artificial need. I'll have to reset your energy pathways, and that process is agonizing." "Do it," he said without hesitation. "I've been in agony for months. Whatever pain you cause can't be worse than this. Don't be so sure." She dipped her fingers in the oil and reached for his temples. The moment she touched his skin, they both gasped. The contact sent a shockwave through her system. Her healing sense immediately flooded with information. Too much information. His hunger, his desperation, his pain, his regret, all of it crashing into her mind in an overwhelming wave. And underneath it all, she felt the curse. Because that's what this was. A sophisticated, vicious curse designed to make him suffer, to drive him slowly insane with artificial need, to destroy him from the inside out. "Who did this to you?" she whispered, her fingers already working, tracing energy lines across his temples, his neck, his chest, trying to unravel the malicious magic woven through his system. "I don't know," he gritted out, his whole body tensing under her touch. "But I have suspicions." "Tell me," she commanded, her hands moving lower, pressing against the curse's anchor points. It hurt him. She could feel that, but she didn't stop. "Morgana," he gasped. "2 months after you left, she tried to position herself as my mate, wanted to formalize an arrangement. I refused, said I would choose my own mate when the time was right. She was furious, claimed I'd led her on, made promises. I hadn't. Week later, the hunger started. Sera's hands stilled. She cursed you because you rejected her, because she wanted power you wouldn't give." His amber eyes found hers, and in them she saw truth, raw and undeniable. "Just like I cast you out because you threatened her plans. Morgana wanted you gone because you could sense her deception. You were the only one who saw through her manipulation. She knew if you stayed, you'd eventually expose her, so she orchestrated your destruction." "And you let her," Sera said bitterly, her hands resuming their work, pressing harder now, drawing the curse's poison to the surface. "I was a fool," he arched under her touch, his breathing ragged. "I valued the counsel of a manipulator over the instincts of a genuine healer. I condemned an innocent Omega because I was too proud to question a beta's word, and I've regretted it every day since." "Good," Sera said coldly, even as her healing sense screamed at the corruption she was pulling from his system. "You should regret it. You destroyed my life, ruined my reputation, cast me out with nothing. Do you have any idea what it's like for an Omega alone in the borderlands?" "I can imagine." His voice was strained. "Actually, no. You can't." Her hands pressed against his heart now, where the curse's core pulsed with malicious energy. "I was attacked within a week. Rogues who saw a lone Omega and thought I'd be easy prey. I survived because I ran faster than they expected, hid better than they anticipated. I went days without food, weeks without shelter. I learned to sleep in trees because the ground wasn't safe." "Sera, I'm so sorry, goddess. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't feed me," she snapped. "Sorry doesn't protect me. Sorry doesn't undo 5 years of survival." But despite her anger, despite the bitterness poisoning her words, her hands remained gentle, precise, healing, because that's who she was, who she'd always been. Even when every instinct screamed to hurt him the way he'd hurt her, she couldn't. "This is going to be the worst part," she warned. "The curse has anchored itself to your mating instincts. To remove it, I have to temporarily sever that connection. It's going to feel like your wolf is dying." "Do it," he said immediately. His trust, absolute and unquestioning, made something twist in her chest. She took a breath and drove her healing energy deep into the curse's core. Darian screamed. The sound was primal, agonized, barely human. His body convulsed, his hands gripping the chair arms so hard the wood cracked. His wolf, that ancient powerful presence, howled in devastation as she carefully, methodically separated it from the curse's corruption. "I'm sorry," Sera whispered, tears streaming down her face even as she continued the brutal work. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." But she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because if she did, the curse would kill him within days. The process took hours. By the time she finally withdrew her hands, both of them were soaked in sweat, trembling with exhaustion. Darian slumped in the chair, barely conscious. The grayish tint had left his skin, replaced by healthy color. His breathing, though ragged, was steady. And most importantly, the chaotic storm of his energy had calmed. The hunger that had been consuming him was gone. "Is it over?" he whispered. "The curse is broken," she confirmed, stumbling backward to lean against her table, exhausted beyond measure. "But the damage it caused will take time to heal. Your energy pathways are shredded. Your wolf is traumatized. You need rest. Weeks of it." He tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Sera caught him instinctively, though he outweighed her by probably 100 pounds. Together, they crashed to the floor in an undignified heap. For a moment, they just lay there, breathing hard. Then, Darian laughed. A real laugh, rusty from disuse but genuine. "I'm lying on your floor," he said. "The mighty Lycan King, defeated by a healing session. You're lying on my floor because you ignored a curse for months instead of seeking proper help immediately," Sera corrected. But there was no heat in her words, just exhaustion. "Can you make it to the bed? I'll take the chair." "We're both taking the bed," he said. "It's big enough, and I'm not taking your bed while you suffer in a chair after saving my life." Sera wanted to argue, but she was so tired, so completely drained, and the bed was right there, just a few feet away. "Fine," she conceded, "but if you try anything, I still have enough energy left to blast you through the wall." "Noted," he said with another weak laugh. Together, they crawled to the bed, neither bothering to remove their clothes or get under the covers. They simply collapsed on top of the quilts, side by side, not touching, but close enough to feel each other's warmth. "Sera," Darian said quietly into the darkness, "thank you. For helping me even after everything I did, for being the person I should have recognized you were 5 years ago." "Don't thank me yet," she replied, her eyes already closing. "Wait until you see my bill. Healing a king's curse isn't cheap." "I'll pay whatever you ask," he said seriously. "Gold, land, title, whatever you need. I just want to be left alone," she whispered. "No more courts, no more politics, no more people who look at an omega and see something lesser. Just peace." "Then peace you'll have," he promised. "I swear it." They fell asleep like that, the king and the omega, the man who'd destroyed her and the woman who'd saved him, neither knowing that the curse breaking was only the beginning, that Morgana was still out there, still plotting, still dangerous, and that the hunger Sera had removed from Darian hadn't been entirely artificial. Underneath the curse, beneath the corruption, there had been something real, something natural, something that would return now that the false need was gone, the true mating bond, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be claimed, waiting to change everything. Sera woke to sunlight streaming through her cottage windows and a warm weight against her back. For a moment, she couldn't remember why someone was in her bed. Then memory crashed back. The king, the curse, the healing. She turned carefully, finding Darian still asleep beside her. In rest, his face had lost its hard edges. He looked younger, almost vulnerable. The powerful king stripped down to just a man, exhausted and healing. She should move. Should put distance between them, should maintain the boundaries she'd set. But something made her pause. Her healing sense was still active, monitoring his recovery, and what she felt made her breath catch. His energy had stabilized overnight. The pathways she'd repaired were already strengthening. His wolf, though still weak, was no longer howling in pain. He was healing faster than should be possible, unless, the thought hit her like lightning, unless he was healing fast because she was near, because her presence, her energy, was feeding his recovery. Omega healers were rare. Omega healers who could unconsciously boost another Lycan's healing simply by proximity were almost unheard of. Sera pulled back, creating space between them. Immediately, she felt it. A slight dimming in his energy, a slowing of his recovery. The moment she moved closer again, his healing accelerated. "Oh, goddess," she whispered. "What am I? What's wrong?" Darian's eyes opened, amber and alert despite his exhaustion. "Nothing's wrong. Something's very right." She sat up, pulling her knees to her chest. "Your wolf is using my presence to heal faster. That shouldn't be possible unless what?" He pushed himself up on one elbow, wincing slightly at the movement. "Unless we're compatible." she finished quietly. Unless your wolf recognizes mine as a potential mate. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Sera, he said carefully, I should tell you something. The hunger, the curse, amplified. It wasn't entirely false. There was a foundation of real attraction, real need. The curse just took something natural and twisted it into agony. You're attracted to me, she said flatly. The woman you called worthless, the Omega you cast out, the healer you condemned. Yes, he said simply. No excuses, no justifications, just honesty. Though I didn't realize it 5 years ago, I was too blind, too influenced by Morgana's poison, too convinced that Omega meant lesser. I've spent 5 years learning how wrong I was. And now I'm attracted to your strength, your courage, your skill, the way you survived everything I put you through and became someone even more powerful than before. He met her eyes. I'm attracted to the real you, the one I was too stupid to see before. That doesn't mean I expect anything, he added quickly. You owe me nothing, less than nothing. I came here for healing, and you've given that. If you want me to leave the moment I'm strong enough to travel, I'll go. I'll make sure you're protected, compensated, left in peace. And you'll never hear from me again, Sera. Studied him, looking for deception, for manipulation, for any sign this was another trap. But all she saw was sincerity and exhaustion, and hope so fragile it might shatter at a word. I don't know what I want, she admitted. 5 years ago, I would have been thrilled to catch the king's attention. Now, I'm not that girl anymore. I've built a life here, a quiet life, safe, simple, mine, and I'm terrified of losing that. I won't take it from you, he said firmly. Whatever happens or doesn't happen between us. Cottage, this land, your peace, that's yours. I'll put it in writing if you want. Sign over the deed, make it legally untouchable. You do that? Why? Because I owe you more than I could ever repay, and because you deserve security, deserve to never fear being cast out again. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sera tensed immediately, her hand moving to the knife she kept hidden under her pillow. Old habits from the borderlands. Who knows you're here? She hissed at Darian. No one, he said, immediately alert despite his weakness. I told my second in command I was going north to hunt. Didn't mention you or where I was really going. The knock came again, harder this time. Sera Moonwhisper, a voice called, female, familiar in a way that made Sera's blood run cold. I know you're in there, and I know you have something that belongs to me. Morgana, Darian's voice was a growl. How did she find me? Sera was already moving, grabbing her healing bag, checking escape routes. She probably tracked your energy signature. You're a king. Your presence leaves traces. Damn it. He tried to stand and swayed, still too weak for confrontation. Sera, you need to run. Let me handle her. In your condition, she'll kill you in seconds. Sera's mind raced. The back window. There's a path through the woods. If we move fast, I can come back for you, Sera interrupted. I'm not abandoning a patient, even one who used to be a terrible person. His look said they'd discuss that later. Right now, the front door was starting to glow. Morgana was using magic to break through the wards. Amateur wards that Sera had set up herself, not strong enough to stop a determined beta with power. We don't have time to run, Sera said. She's coming through, then we fight. Darian's wolf surged forward despite his weakness, his eyes flashing amber. I won't let her hurt you. The door exploded inward. Morgana stood in the threshold, and she was terrifying. Her silver eyes blazed with madness. Her hair whipped around her face like a living shadow. Power crackled around her fingertips, dark and corrupt. Behind her stood 3 rogues, hired muscle. You, Morgana's gaze fixed on Sera with pure hatred. You ruined everything. I had plans, perfect plans. I was going to be queen. I was going to rule through him. But you had to see through my deception. Had to be so goddamn perceptive. So I made sure you were destroyed. And when that wasn't enough, when I heard rumors of a healer in the borderlands with
unusual power, I had to make sure. You cursed me, Darian snarled, moving in front of Sera despite his weakness. You made me suffer for months because I rejected you. Oh, the curse was just the beginning. Morgana's smile was vicious. I wanted you desperate, wanted you weak, wanted you to come crawling to every healer in the realm, humiliating yourself, proving you weren't the mighty king everyone believed. And then, when you were completely broken, I'd swoop in with a cure, become your savior, your necessary mate. You're insane, Sera said. Probably, Morgana agreed cheerfully, but I'm also powerful and patient and very, very angry that you survived, little Omega, that you not only survived but became strong enough to break my beautiful curse. The rogues moved forward, Darian met them despite his condition, his wolf lending him desperate strength. He took down one with a vicious strike to the throat, dodged the second's claws by inches. But he was weak, wounded. Within seconds, they'd overpower him. Sera's healing instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, to survive. But something else stirred inside her, something that had been growing during her 5 years in the borderlands, something that had learned strength comes in forms other than claws and fangs. Her hands began to glow, not with healing light this time, with something else, something she'd discovered during the darkest nights alone, when healing wasn't enough and she'd needed to protect herself. She could hurt as well as heal. The energy that flowed through her, that allowed her to repair damaged pathways, could also be used to damage healthy ones. It went against everything a healer should be, everything she'd been taught. But in the borderlands, she'd learned rules were luxuries, survival was necessity. Sera thrust her hands toward the nearest rogue. Her power lashed out like a whip, striking the Lycan's energy core. He screamed, collapsing as his own energy turned against him, his nervous system misfiring, his body temporarily paralyzed. The other rogues froze, staring at the Omega who'd just dropped one of their own without touching him. "What?" one breathed. "What are you?" "A survivor," Sera said coldly, her hands still glowing. "Now get out, or I'll show you exactly what 5 years in the borderlands taught me about pain." They ran, abandoning Morgana without a second thought, leaving just the beta and the 2 people she'd tried to destroy. "Cowards!" Morgana spat. Then she turned her attention to Sera. "Fine, I'll handle this myself. I've wanted to kill you for 5 years anyway." She raised her hands, dark magic swirling. Sera raised hers in response, her unusual power crackling with light. 2 forces meeting in the center of the small cottage, colliding with enough force to shatter every window and crack the stone fireplace. Darian tried to intervene, but Morgana sent him flying with a casual gesture. He hit the wall hard, slumping. Unconscious or dying, Sera couldn't tell. Rage flooded through her. "You've hurt enough people," she snarled. "You manipulated a king, cursed him, cast me out, spent 5 years plotting revenge because your pride couldn't handle rejection. This ends now." "Oh, it does," Morgana agreed. "With your death, she unleashed everything, every bit of dark magic she'd been harboring, every corrupt spell she'd learned, all of it aimed at Sera with lethal intent. And Sera, the Omega healer everyone had dismissed as worthless, met it head on. Her power surged, not just healing now, not just hurting, something else, something she'd never fully understood, the ability to manipulate life energy itself, to give it or take it, to boost or drain. She'd been born with healing, had developed the hurting in the borderlands. This third ability? She'd discovered it by accident 3 months ago when a wounded deer had been dying in her garden. She'd tried to heal it, failed, but somehow transferred its remaining life force into the plants around it, watched them bloom in an explosion of growth while the deer peacefully passed. She'd been terrified of this power, had tried to ignore it, but now, facing Morgana's killing blow, she had no choice. Sera reached out with her gift. Not toward Morgana, toward the corrupt magic itself. And she drained it, pulled the energy from those dark spells like water from a well, absorbed it into herself and immediately converted it, transformed corruption into pure healing light. Morgana's attack dissolved mid-flight. The beta staggered, shocked. "Impossible," she whispered. "You're an Omega. You shouldn't be able to." "I'm not just an Omega," Sera said quietly, her whole body glowing now. "I'm something else, something your prejudice wouldn't let you see 5 years ago, something even I didn't fully understand until you forced me to survive alone." She raised her hands. "I could kill you right now, could drain every bit of life force from your body and feed it to the forest, watch you wither while the trees bloom. Would you?" Morgana's voice was defiant even in defeat. "Would you become a killer?" Sera hesitated. Every fiber of her being screamed for revenge, for justice, for this woman to suffer the way she'd made others suffer. But when she looked at her glowing hands, she saw only one thing. A healer's hands. That's who she was, who she'd always been. Even when survival demanded she learn to hurt, her core nature remained. "I won't kill you," she said finally, "but I will make sure you can never hurt anyone again." She reached out with surgical precision, found the part of Morgana's energy that allowed her to use magic, and sealed it, not painfully, not violently, just completely. Morgana gasped as her power vanished. She collapsed to her knees, reaching desperately for magic that no longer answered. "What did you do? What did you do to me?" "I took away your ability to harm others," Sera said. "Your magic is gone, permanently. You'll live, you'll be healthy, but you'll be powerless, just like you tried to make everyone else feel." "No," Morgana's voice broke. No, please, you can't, I can, and I have. Sera turned away from the broken beta, her attention immediately going to Darian, still slumped against the wall. She rushed to him, her hands already glowing with healing light. His energy was scattered but present. She poured her power into him, knitting cracked ribs, healing the head wound, stabilizing his traumatized system. Darian's eyes fluttered open. Sera, you're safe, she assured him. We're both safe. Morgana is powerless. The threat is over. He sat up slowly, wincing. Then his gaze found Morgana, still kneeling on the floor, sobbing. You didn't kill her? I'm a healer, Sera said simply. It's not in my nature. Even after everything she did to you, to us, you showed mercy. His voice was filled with awe. You're remarkable. I'm tired, she corrected, and my cottage is destroyed, and I need you both out of here so I can think. But Morgana, she started, will be dealt with legally, Darian interrupted, strength returning to his voice as his king's authority reasserted itself. She admitted to cursing me, to conspiracy, to attempted murder. My second in command should be tracking my energy signature. He'll arrive with guards within hours. Morgana will face trial. Justice, not revenge. Sera nodded, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only bone-deep weariness. She swayed. Darian caught her. Easy, he murmured. You've been through too much. Need to rest. Can't rest yet, she said, even as her eyes drooped. Need to ward the cottage. Clean up. Make sure you need to let someone else take care of things for once, he said gently. Let me help. You've saved me twice now. Let me return the favor. Too tired to argue, Sera let him guide her to the one chair that hadn't been destroyed in the fight. She sank into it, her body finally demanding the rest she'd been denying it. Within minutes, she was asleep. When she woke, everything had changed. The cottage had been cleaned, the broken windows temporarily covered, her scattered possessions carefully reorganized, and sitting by the rebuilt fire, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, was Darian. How long was I asleep? She asked, her voice rough. 6 hours, he replied. My people arrived 3 hours ago. Morgana is in custody, being transported back to Nightshade territory for trial. Your cottage is under royal protection. And I've been sitting here trying to figure out how to apologize for 5 years of catastrophic mistakes. Sera pulled herself upright, studying him. His color was better. His energy nearly restored. He looked like the powerful king again. But something in his eyes was different, humbler, aware. You can't apologize for 5 years in one conversation, she said. No, he agreed, but I can start. He moved closer, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye level. Sera Moonwhisper, I was wrong about you. Catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. You were never worthless. Never forgettable, never lesser. You were exceptional, and I was too blind to see it. Pretty words, she said, but her voice lacked venom, just exhaustion. Are they just words, or do you mean them? I mean them with everything I am, he said fervently. I've spent 5 years recognizing my mistakes, learning, growing, becoming someone worthy of asking for a second chance. He took a breath. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I should leave you in peace like I promised. But Sera, the mating bond, it's real. My wolf recognized yours the moment I crossed your threshold, and I hope, yours recognized mine too. She wanted to deny it, but she'd felt it, that pull, that recognition, her omega instincts singing in a way they never had before. Even 5 years ago, when she'd been at court, she hadn't felt this, because she'd been too afraid, too diminished, too focused on survival to recognize her own wolf's desires. I felt it, she admitted quietly, but feeling something doesn't mean acting on it, doesn't mean forgetting what you did. I know, he said, and I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not asking you to forgive. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I've changed, to court you properly, to show you that the man I am now is someone worthy of the woman you've become. And if after all that you still want me to leave, I'll go. No arguments, no demands, just acceptance. Sera looked at him, really looked, saw the sincerity in his eyes, the hope, the fear that she'd reject him the way he'd once rejected her. It would be so easy to send him away, to punish him with loss the way he'd punished her. But that wasn't who she was. How long, she asked, how long would this courtship be? As long as you need, he said immediately. Months, years, however long it takes for you to trust me again, or to decide you never will. That's your choice to make. I want terms, she said. Boundaries, protections, anything, he agreed. First, this cottage and the surrounding land are mine, legally, irrevocably. You put it in writing. Already done, he pulled a scroll from his jacket. Signed by me and witnessed by my second in command. This land is yours in perpetuity. No one can take it from you, not even me. Second, if I tell you to leave at any point, you leave. No arguments, no negotiations. Agreed. Third, you prove your changes through actions, not words. You want to court me? You do it here. In my world, by my rules. You don't summon me to court. Don't parade me in front of nobles. Don't use me as a political pawn. I wouldn't dream of it, he said. Your comfort is paramount. Fourth, she hesitated, then pushed forward. You acknowledge publicly what you did to me. You tell your court the truth about Morgana's manipulation, about your mistake in casting me out. You clear my name. That was already in motion before I left, he said quietly. I sent letters to every kingdom, every major pact, retracting the accusations against you, announcing that you'd been falsely accused and
wrongfully exiled, declaring that any who'd refused you service or shelter had acted on false information. Your reputation is being restored as we speak.
Sera's breath caught.
You did that? Before you even found me? Before I even knew if you'd help me?
Why?
Because it was the right thing to do, he said simply. Because you deserve to have your name cleared regardless of whether you ever spoke to me again. Because justice delayed is justice denied. She felt tears prick her eyes. That's a good start. A good start, he repeated with a small smile. Does that mean you'll give me a chance? One chance, she said. You mess this up, Darien Nightshade, and I will make the borderlands look like a vacation.
Understood, he said solemnly. Then, softer. Thank you, Sera, for your mercy, your healing, your willingness to see me as more than my worst mistake. Just don't make me regret it, she warned. Never, he vowed. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Sera had imagined. Darien stayed in the borderlands, not in her cottage, that would have been too much, too fast, but in a small cabin he had built within walking distance, close enough to visit daily, far enough to give her space. He came every morning with fresh supplies, bread from the baker in the nearest town, herbs for her healing work, firewood already cut and stacked. He never asked for anything in return, never demanded her time or attention, just provided and left, respecting her boundaries. Slowly, Sera began to relax around him, to talk beyond the bare minimum, to share pieces of her life in the borderlands, the struggles, the small victories, the loneliness that had carved hollows in her chest during those first terrible months alone. And Darien listened, really listened, didn't interrupt or defend or explain away his role in her suffering, just absorbed her pain and carried it with visible grief. I can never give you back those 5 years, he said one evening as they sat by her fire. They'd been sharing a quiet dinner, their first meal together since that chaotic first night. I can't undo the trauma or erase the memories, but I can make sure your future is different, can fill it with support instead of dismissal, trust instead of betrayal. How? She asked. How do you rebuild trust after destroying it so completely? One day at a time, he said. One choice at a time. Every time I could make the easy, selfish choice, I choose you instead. Every time I could prioritize my pride, I choose humility. Every time I could demand, I ask. And eventually, maybe you'll believe I've changed. Show me, she challenged. Show me one way you've changed. He thought for a moment. Then, 5 years ago, I would have assumed my presence was a gift, that any Omega would be grateful for a king's attention. Now? I know my presence is a privilege you grant, one you can revoke at any moment, and I'm grateful every single day that you haven't. That's... Sera swallowed hard. That's a significant change. There's more, he said. 5 years ago, I thought power meant control, dominance, making others submit. Now I understand power is choosing gentleness when you could destroy, showing mercy when you could take revenge, like you did with Morgana. You're more powerful than I ever was because you know when not to use your strength. You're going to make me cry, she said, her voice thick. I'm trying to make you believe, he replied softly. Believe that this isn't a game or manipulation, that my feelings are real, that I see you, Sera, not as an Omega or a healer or a useful tool, as you, complex, strong, wounded, extraordinary you. She did cry then, tears streaming down her face as 5 years of pain finally found release. Darien didn't rush to comfort her, didn't tell her to stop or that everything was fine. He simply stayed, present, solid, letting her feel without trying to fix. When she finally composed herself, she found him watching her with such tenderness it stole her breath. I'm falling for you, she admitted, again, or maybe still. I don't know, but it terrifies me. Why? he asked gently. Because you've hurt me before, she said. Because I gave you my trust and you destroyed it. Because I don't know if I can survive that pain again if this doesn't work out. Then I'll make sure it works out, he said with quiet conviction. I'll make sure this time, every time, I'm worthy of your trust. I'll make mistakes, Sera. I'm not perfect. But I swear on my crown, my pack, my life itself, I will never dismiss you again. Never make you feel small. Never choose pride over truth. The mating bond hummed between them, stronger now, fed by proximity and genuine connection. Her wolf recognized his, called to him, wanted him. And for the first time, Sera let herself want back. Not the fantasy version she'd imagined 5 years ago, but the real man, flawed and learning, humble and trying, changed and still changing. Darian, she said softly. Yes? If I asked you to kiss me right now, would you? His eyes darkened with want, but he didn't move. Is that what you're asking? Yes, she whispered. Then yes, he breathed. I would very much like to kiss you. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, to pull back, to say no. But Sera didn't want to say no. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted to reclaim something that had been stolen from her 5 years ago. The choice, the agency, the right to desire and be desired in return. Their lips met softly, tentatively. A question asked and answered, and then deeper, more certain. 5 years of longing and loss and learning poured into that kiss. His hands cradled her face like she was precious, irreplaceable. Hers fisted in his shirt, holding him close, refusing to let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Darian pressed his forehead to hers. That was, he started, worth waiting for, she finished, worth everything. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing each other's air, letting the mating bond settle into something sure and strong. I'm not ready for more, Sera said quietly. Not yet. I need time. Take all the time you need, he assured her. I'm not going anywhere. Weeks passed, then months. The courtship continued, slow and steady. Darian proved his worth not through grand gestures but through consistency. He showed up every day, helped with her work without being asked, learned about healing so he could be useful rather than just present. He brought her books from the capital, rare herbs she couldn't find in the borderlands, stories from court that made her laugh. He never pressured her for more than she was willing to give, never complained when she needed space or time alone, just accepted her boundaries with grace. And slowly, Sera's walls came down. She began to trust again, to believe this was real, that he truly had changed, that maybe, just maybe, they could build something beautiful from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. The first time she invited him to stay the night, nothing happened beyond sleep. They simply lay in her bed, fully clothed, talking until dawn, sharing stories and fears and dreams. It was intimate in ways that had nothing to do with physical connection. The second time, they kissed until her lips were swollen and they were both aching with want. But they stopped there, savoring the anticipation, building the tension. The third time, 6 months into their courtship, Sera looked at him and said, I'm ready. Ready for what? He asked, though his eyes said he knew. To complete the bond, she said, to accept you as my mate, if you still want me. Want you? His voice was rough with emotion. Sera, I've wanted you since the moment I walked into your cottage and realized what a fool I'd been. But are you sure? This isn't something you can undo. I'm sure, she said. I trust you now. Trust that you've changed. Trust that you see me as an equal, not a subordinate. Trust that you'll spend the rest of your life proving you're worthy of this bond. I will, he vowed, every day for the rest of our lives. Then claim me, she whispered. Make me yours. What followed was tender and passionate and healing in ways that had nothing to do with her gifts. Darian worshipped her body like she was sacred, took his time learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, what made her dig her nails into his shoulders and beg. Please, he breathed against her skin, just one taste, just let me. Yes, she gasped as his mouth found the mating gland on her neck. Yes, Darian, yes. When his teeth finally sank into that sensitive spot, claiming her as his mate, the bond snapped into place with a force that shook the cottage foundations, pure and complete and unbreakable. Sera cried out, her own teeth finding his neck, returning the claim, making him as much hers as she was his. The world exploded into sensation. She could feel everything he felt, his love, his devotion, his overwhelming relief that she'd given him this chance. And he could feel her trust, her hope, her cautious joy that maybe, finally, she'd found her home. They collapsed together afterward, tangled in sheets in each other, breathing hard and grinning like fools. That was, Darian started. Everything, Sera finished. He laughed, pulling her close. You're mine now. No takesy-backsies. I'm yours, she corrected. And you're mine. There's a difference. He kissed her temple. Agreed. We belong to each other. Equal partners. Always. Always, she echoed. They stayed in the borderlands for another month, basking in their new bond, learning each other, building their foundation away from politics and pressure and prying eyes. But eventually, reality intruded. Darian, a messenger from Nightshade, arrived one morning, looking exhausted and urgent. The council requires your return. There are matters that demand the king's attention. Darian looked at Sera, question in his eyes. She sighed. You have responsibilities, a kingdom to run. I understand. Come with me, he said immediately. Not as a subordinate or a servant, as my queen, my equal. Help me rule. I don't know anything about politics, she protested. You know about people, he countered, about healing and helping and seeing truth beneath deception. That's what a kingdom needs. Not more politicians, more healers, she considered. The thought of returning to court, to the place that had rejected her, made her stomach twist. But she wasn't that broken girl anymore. She was stronger now, powerful, protected by a mate who'd proven his devotion. And maybe, just maybe, she could help, could use her position to protect other Omegas who'd been dismissed and diminished, could change things from the inside. Okay, she said, I'll come, but we do this together, side by side, not you leading and me following. Side by side, he agreed, always. They returned to Nightshade territory 3 days later. The court's reaction to their mating bond was mixed. Some were genuinely happy for their king. Others barely concealed their displeasure that he'd chosen an Omega, and not just any Omega, but the one they'd cast out. Sera held her head high through all of it, Darian's hand in hers, his support unwavering. And when the High Priestess formally recognized their bond and crowned her queen, Sera looked out at the assembled court and thought, You tried to break me. All of you. You called me worthless and cast me out. But I survived, I thrived, and now I'm your queen. Watch me prove every single one of you wrong. 1 year into their reign, Sera stood on the balcony of their chambers, watching the sun set over Nightshade territory. Darian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different everything is from 5 years ago, she said. How I almost gave up so many times in the borderlands. How close I came to believing I really was worthless. But you didn't give up, he said. You survived. You found your strength. You saved me. We saved each other, she corrected. You gave me purpose again. Reminded me that showing mercy doesn't make me weak, that choosing healing over revenge is its own kind of power. And you gave me humility, he replied. Taught me that true strength is admitting when you're wrong, that a king's power means nothing if he wields it cruelly. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. I love you, Sera said, more than I thought possible after everything. I love you too, he replied, more than I deserve, but I'll spend every day trying to earn it. You already have, she said softly, turning in his arms to face him. You proved yourself 100 times over, proved you're not the man who cast me out. You're someone better, someone I'm proud to call my mate, my king, my partner. Then we're both lucky, he said, cupping her face, because I get to call you my queen, my healer, my heart. They kissed as the stars wheeled overhead, two people who'd been broken and remade, who'd learned that sometimes the greatest love stories started with the worst mistakes. That rejection wasn't the end, but the beginning. That worthless was a lie, told by those too blind to see the truth. And in the years that followed, their story became legend. The Lycan King who'd been brought to his knees by desperate need, the Omega healer who'd survived exile and returned powerful beyond measure. The mating bond forged not in perfection, but in redemption. Young Omegas across the realm heard the tale and believed they too could survive rejection, could find their strength, could prove the world wrong. And Queen Sera, with King Darian at her side, made sure that belief became reality. She opened healing academies, created sanctuaries for exiled Omegas, reformed laws that had kept her kind suppressed for generations. She used her power not for revenge, but for change. Not to tear down, but to build up. Not to replicate the cruelty she'd endured, but to ensure no one else would have to endure it. On quiet nights, when court was settled and duties were done, Darian would still sometimes whisper against her skin, "Please, just one taste." And Sera would laugh, would remember that desperate night when a king had begged at her door, would marvel at how far they'd both come. "One taste led to forever," she'd reply. "Best decision I ever made. Best decision we both made," he'd correct. Then he'd kiss her, soft and sweet and full of promise, and they'd fall asleep tangled together, two souls who'd found their way home through darkness and pain and the stubborn refusal to give up on love, even when it seemed impossible, even when it required forgiveness that felt undeserved, even when the easier path would have been revenge. They chose each other every day, every moment, every breath, and that choice made all the difference. Years later, when their first child was born, a daughter with Sera's silver blonde hair and Darian's amber eyes, they named her Hope, because that's what they represented. Hope that mistakes could be overcome, that broken things could be healed, that love, real love, was worth fighting for, even when every odd was stacked against it. The realm flourished under their rule, not because they were perfect, but because they were real, because they acknowledged their flaws and worked to be better, because they led with compassion rather than control, and because they never forgot where they'd come from, the rejected Omega and the prideful King, both transformed by suffering into something stronger. On the night of their 10th anniversary, Sera stood in the same throne room where she'd been condemned, but now it was decorated for celebration, filled with people who loved and respected her. She wore a crown that represented not just her position, but her journey. And when Darian took her hand and led her in the first dance, she looked into his eyes and saw only love. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a second chance, for seeing the man I could become, for loving me despite everything." "Thank you for changing," she replied, "for proving that people can grow, for showing me that my worth was never determined by those who were too blind to see it." They danced as the court watched, as musicians played, as their daughter slept peacefully in the nursery upstairs, guarded by loyal pack members who would die before letting harm come to their princess. And Sera thought about that desperate night a decade ago, about the broken Omega pressing her back against a door, about the dying king begging for one taste, one chance, one moment of mercy. She'd given him that chance, had chosen healing over revenge, had believed in redemption even when it seemed impossible. And in return, she'd gained everything: a kingdom, a partner, a love that transformed them both. Sometimes, she realized, the greatest power wasn't in saying no, it was in saying yes, yes to possibility, yes to change, yes to love even when it was terrifying. Yes to believing people could be better than their worst mistakes. That night, as they returned to their chambers, Darian pulled her close. "I was dying when I came to you," he said quietly. "Dying from a curse and my own stubbornness and the weight of mistakes I couldn't undo. You saved my life, Sera." "No," she replied, kissing him softly. "We saved each other. That's what mates do." They fell asleep in each other's arms, the mating bond humming contentedly between them, strong and sure and unbreakable. Two people who'd found their way through darkness into light, who'd learned that worthless was a lie and love was always, always worth fighting for. And somewhere in the forest beyond the castle, in a small cottage that Sera still maintained as a retreat, moonflowers bloomed, bright and beautiful and thriving, just like the Omega who'd once believed she was nothing, who'd survived exile and pain and rejection, who'd become a queen, not despite her struggles, but because of them. Her journey had made her strong, her suffering had given her compassion. Her rejection had taught her the value of acceptance, and her choice to heal rather than hurt had changed an entire kingdom. That was the real magic, not her healing gifts or unusual powers, but her refusal to let cruelty make her cruel, her determination to be better than those who'd hurt her, her belief that love and mercy and forgiveness could transform even the deepest wounds into something beautiful. The Lycan King had come to her desperate, dying, begging for just one taste, and she'd given him everything, not because he deserved it, but because she chose to, because that's who she was: a healer, a survivor, a queen, and most importantly, herself, valuable not because of any title or position, but simply because she existed, because she was Sera Moonwhisper. And she was enough. She had always been enough. The world had just needed time to catch up.